Welcome to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're bringing you a review of Caverna, Cave vs. Cave. This is the newest one that came out at Origins from Uwe Rosenberg and Mayfair, and it is a two-player game.
It is. It's a two-player game, but it is not two-player Caverna.
Yeah.
You can play Caverna for a two-player Caverna. This is a very different experience. Similar DNA, of course, but definitely different than its father, if you will.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the components in the game, and then we'll get through the actual gameplay and tell you our feelings at the end. You have a strip across the center of the board. In this location, you're going to have a number of tiles that will be revealed at the start of every single round. There's going to be 8 rounds, and you're going to start with 4 of these already face up. These are the same 4 for every single game that you play.
Right, those are the starting tiles, and then you've got a few 2 tiles, which will flip over, and then 3s. Those are each going to be shuffled up in and of themselves, so it offers a little bit of variability as things come out each time you play.
You'll have a supply off to the side. This supply will have the same exact 6 tiles. These are cave tiles that you can build into your player board. Speaking of your player board, there are 9 tiles randomly placed face down on each of the 2 players' player boards. You can excavate these tiles and place these as well into the supply. So anytime you excavate, it allows that player as well as the other player to build those specific caves.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. In normal Caverna, you're not starting with any tiles. Here you have to remove these to create rooms that you can then bring back. But it's important to note, these are not your tiles necessarily. They're going to go out to the common supply, so they're up for grabs. You can also control, once you get to know the tiles, what comes out and maybe what doesn't come out.
Right. You have 1 pre-built tile or room in your board. This will give you 0 victory points. However, it will allow you to get some resources when you activate those rooms. And then off to the side, you have a resource track. There's 6 different resources. Each of them have a maximum of 9 and a minimum of 0, except the gold, which can be flipped over and have 19 total.
Right. This is one of those areas where it definitely decreased the footprint of a Caverna game because you're not having piles and piles of wood and wheat and etc.
You also have some other components. You have a first player marker. You have some cave walls. Each of the different cave rooms have a different placement on how they need to be placed. Some of them require 2 walls. Some of them require 3 walls. Some of them require to be completely surrounded. So you'll be building these cave walls, placing them into your area, and then placing those rooms in those areas. You also have an additional tile. The first player to build a room in every single one of their cave locations can build another location at the end. So that's basically the components. Let's talk about the gameplay itself. Each of the rounds is going to start, including the very first round of the game, by flipping one of the tiles in the center board. This is going to reveal a new action that players can take.
Right.
You'll notice on the back of these tiles, they have a number that designates how many actions each of the players can take in that round. So in the very first 3 rounds of the game, you're going to be taking 2 actions. From then on, it's 3 actions, and then the final round of the game, each player is taking 4 actions. To take an action, it's extremely simple. You just pick one of the tiles, and you pull it to your side of the board.
Right, it's a little bit different than a worker placement, but effectively the same. You're basically choosing an action and thereby keeping your opponent from choosing that same action. Yeah, the numbers, as Jeremy was speaking, kind of represent the number of dwarves you have. One of the things you don't have to worry about in this game is growing your family.
Yeah.
So you're going to start out with 2 dwarves, 2 actions, 3 dwarves, 3 actions, and so on.
These actions allow you to do a variety of different things. One of them is to gather resources. Some of them are to take actions within your room. Anytime you see one of these orange squares with a number in them, that's how many rooms you can activate within your cave that are already been built. For instance, if I took the one action here, I would get 2 wood, and then I get to activate any one of my tiles. In this case, I could take one of any of those resources and move them up on the supply track.
Exactly, and this is where the engine building really starts, because as you grow your cave, as you build more rooms, you're going to get rooms that synergize with one another, and you're able to, later in the game, activate 2 rooms, maybe 3 rooms. There's a special tile that allows you to even activate bonus rooms, so you're able to create nice little combos where you trade these resources for these resources and then those resources for gold or something like that.
2 of the other main actions that you'll discover on these tiles, one of them is to build a room. Whenever you see the tile placement here, it's typically 1 food for every single dwarf that you have. And again,
Right.
at the start of the game, you have 2 dwarves, and then you'll have 3 later on, and then 4. That requires 2, 3, or 4 food, and then you have to pay the resources that are at the top of these tiles. And then you have to make sure that those tiles can fit according to the walls that are required on these very specific tiles.
And that's where the puzzly element
Yeah.
of this game comes in that Caverna doesn't have. You're really trying to figure out, okay, do I have a space for these rooms? Because if you don't, you're probably a whole full turn away because you're going to have to get a wall and get it into your cave.
Right. One of the other main actions you'll be taking is excavating your actual cave. Anytime you see the pickaxe, you'll be able to remove a tile. And that's one of the tiles has to be orthogonal to a place that's already been excavated.
Right.
So I could excavate any of these orthogonal tiles. When I do that, I take the tile and I place it face up in the supply, meaning that I can build it in a future turn, or my opponent could build it in a future turn as well. Once each of the 2 players have taken X number of actions, in this case, they pulled 2 of the tiles for each of the players, that signifies the end of the round.
Yeah, and you simply reset, put those tiles back, flip over the next tile, and carry on with the next round. There is not any really upkeep between rounds in this. There's no feeding. The cool thing about the feeding here is that it's kind of represented in your dwarf actions. So if you're going to excavate, you need dwarfs, and that requires some food. If you're going to build rooms, it requires food per dwarf. So it kind of gives you that feeling of having to feed without that sort of nagging feeling at the end of each round that, do I have enough food?
One of the actions you can take anytime in your turn as well is to trade in a gold, a emmer, or a piece of wheat to get 1 food, and
Right.
any amount that you so wish. That's going to help you build tiles.
Yeah, and this is, you know, a lot of games have that sort of like base mechanic where you can trade things in. You will be using that in this game for sure,
Right.
because you're going to interchange wheat and the other resources for food all the time. Probably not gold so much, but you definitely need food to get that excavation and to get those rooms built.
On the very last round of the game, it's kind of unique. The player who has the most gold at that portion can enact that tile and pull it to their side and build a wall and build a room, but only for the person that has the most gold at that specific time.
Right, and what's interesting about that is you might go into the final round with equal amounts of gold. If that's the case, no one gets to use that tile.
Yeah.
However, if on my first action I bump myself up 1 gold, then I'm able to. But then if Jeremy were to do the same, we could basically fight each other into the point where no one gets to use the tile.
That's right. Once the last player takes their 4th tile on the last phase or the 8th round of the game, that signifies the end of the game, and you're simply going to add up your victory points. You're going to count all of the tiles that are the rooms that you've built that have victory points in the upper right-hand corner, plus the gold that you have collected.
Yeah, it's about as simple as it can get. There's 2 things you're adding up, very quick. The scores can be pretty tight.
What are your thoughts?
I like it. It's definitely, it's hard to play a game like this without comparing it to its parent game, if you will.
Right.
We did the same thing last year with 7 Wonders and 7 Wonders Duel.
Right.
This, it must be said, like we said before, it is not Caverna. It is definitely in that sort of universe, but it's a very, very different game. It carries some worker placement-esque elements, but it's a tight little 2-player game. I think if you're looking for the breadth of Caverna, you know, all those different abilities, all those different tiles, all the different things that you can do, all the different ways you can score points, you're not going to get it in this. This is definitely a very, very streamlined, quick, fast-paced game.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I do not like this game. I love Caverna. I think it's a fantastic game. I think it plays perfectly fine as a 2-player game.
It is a good 2-player game.
You're going to get the same, even a more robust experience than what you'll get from this. The issues I have with this game are this. You start with the same 4 exact tiles at the beginning. There's no variability in that. There's no additional tiles that you could mix up and change that focus. Yes, there's new tiles that will come out through the course of the game, but they are, for the number 2s, of the same 3 tiles. They just come in a different order. Same with the 3s and the 4. And then you're going to start with the same exact 6 tiles here, which means the variability in the game is limited.
Yeah,
which means your replay value, for me personally, I think that once you play this 2 or 3 times, you will have gotten everything out of it that you need to get out of it.
I would say that I agree that there seems to be an opportunity for a lot more tiles here. I don't know if they're planning expansion, but I would agree one thing that could benefit it. I think that the action tiles I don't have a big problem with, because I mean that's not too different than most worker placement games. They're the same actions you can take, and they've even got some variability with how they come out. It's these room tiles, these starting room tiles. Say if there were 12 of these and you randomly took 6 from the 12,
there you go.
That would be a big improvement, I think.
Yeah, personally, this doesn't hit all the right buttons for me. I can't really put it into words. It's just not very fulfilling. I would rather play Seven Wonders Duel or a game like Jaipur, which I think is a better 2-player game than this. Just not for me.
Yeah, I think in the spectrum of 2-player games, this is definitely something I would get more play out of. I like engine building. I play with a lot of people that enjoy that sort of idea of building a little engine, getting some combos going, and that is definitely present here. You do have to play a few times to understand what these 18 tiles are, because if someone's played and knows all those 18 tiles and someone hasn't, they definitely have a distinct advantage because they're going to be looking and waiting for those ones that give them those synergies across tiles.
Do you think there's as many paths to victory as there should be in the game? Because I felt like I went with just larger victory point tiles. And you went more with engine building and having a lot of different manipulations by taking room actions themselves.
I feel like this has a lot more of a intense focus on making sure your opponent doesn't do some things. So, for instance, if your opponent's got an engine that's giving them lots of gold, because gold's one of the point scoring mechanisms in the game, you cannot let your opponent then also build the high value rooms. You just can't. If your opponent has a good gold engine and builds 2 of the rooms that are worth 10, maybe 12 points, it's going to be very difficult for you to win.
Well, you can't really stop them either when you're looking at the game, because in order to stop them, you will have had to have built walls previously within the game, which requires you to take those actions to build the walls, because most of those gold-bearing rooms require 3 and 4 walls around those room tiles.
Right. I think the game, you can also do some things to stop your opponents, though, because there's basically not hate drafting, but there's hate selection in this game. You can take a tile in this game, unlike others, and not use it at all. It would be a little crazy to try to do that. But there are going to be times in the last 2 rounds for sure where I'm probably going to be better off denying you 10 points instead of getting 3 points.
Yeah,
and I could take a tile and prevent you from doing that just by keeping you from building another room.
Right. So anyway, that's Caverna, Cave vs. Cave by Uwe Rosenberg. I love the designer, just don't love this one. You like this one,
I do.
And that's perfectly fine. If you guys have questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and anything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by our friends at TMG Games. And at Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.